will be held accountable. The state is a mess right now. We've seen the chaos, and it's constant. And our men and women in law enforcement deserve to be safe, and that's what we're going to do in Minnesota.
At 6:11 a.m., federal officials said they pulled 5.5 tons of narcotics off the streets and froze $74 million tied to a Sinaloa-linked trafficking network moving through the Minneapolis and Minnesota logistics corridors. And then they said the part nobody expected out loud, a state judge wasn't just compromised. The judge was positioned. Stay with this, because what began as a set of warrants in Minneapolis turned into something colder, an engineered protection system built inside the legal process itself, designed to keep a Mexican cartel pipeline moving like it had a badge and a budget. It happened fast. It always does when the door finally opens. And the next part is worse. 4:32 a.m., Minneapolis, Minnesota. The city isn't awake yet. The streets are empty in that way only the upper Midwest can do. Wide lanes, hard angles, sodium lights reflecting off old snowbanks that never fully melt. The air has that metallic bite. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn carries across the river like a warning nobody answers. On a quiet industrial road, a line of vehicles rolls with headlights off. Dark SUVs, unmarked vans, a box truck that looks ordinary until you notice the radio antennas and the men inside wearing plates under their jackets. FBI, DIA, ICE, Date tactical teams. Metro SWAT attached for the hits inside city limits. They're not here for one address. They're here to collapse a system. At 4:34 a.m., the first team stacks on a steel service door behind a so-called import office that hasn't imported anything legitimate in years. The sign on the front reads like a normal business: logistics, freight consulting, dispatch services. The kind of place that would never draw attention in a city built on distribution and movement. But behind the drywall, behind the office chairs and paper shredders was the real business: control. A breaching ram hits the door once, twice. Metal shrieks. The frame gives. Flash. Pop. A white burst in the dark. Agents flooding like black water, rifles up. Voices sharp. Controlled. Federal. Don't move. Inside, the air is stale with chemical cleaners trying to cover something else. The smell that never lies. Solvent. Plastic. The faint sweetness of cut product and cheap cologne. A man bolts toward a back hallway carrying a duffel. He doesn't make it 3 steps. He hits the floor hard, pinned by a knee and a forearm, the bag ripping open just enough to show what it's packed with. Shrink-wrapped bricks and vacuum-sealed bundles, stacked like someone's idea of organized chaos. At the same moment across town, 4:36 a.m., another team hits a sports bar that doesn't open until noon but runs money all night. From the outside, it's neon and tinted windows. Inside, it's a private room lined with screens and ledgers, a cashier station, and an unspoken rule: nobody talks about where the cash comes from. They talk now. Hands. Hands. A suspect tries to tip a metal table, sending laptops and phones crashing to the floor. Another makes for a side exit. He's met by a wall of bodies and a barking K9 that doesn't need a second command. In the first 10 minutes, Minneapolis becomes a grid of moving lights and broken locks. 4:41 a.m., a massage front near the edge of downtown raided by ICE and local SWAT after weeks of surveillance, not just for narcotics, but for the other trade that moves through the same corridors. Human trafficking hidden behind appointments, migrant smuggling debts turned into bondage, terrified people, trained to avoid eye contact and never learn the names of the men collecting cash. 4:49 a.m., a warehouse on the north side that looked like it stored packaging supplies, hit by the DIA. They open one bay door and the smell hits first. Not food packaging, not cardboard. Chemicals. A cartel superlab doesn't always look like the desert scenes people imagine. Sometimes it's Minnesota concrete, industrial fans, plastic drums, masking tape labels, a row of pill presses so clean and bright they could pass as medical equipment if you didn't know better. The agents walk past stacked cartons labeled like household goods. One is sliced open, inside bag after bag of pills, blue, pressed tight, stamped with markings meant to mimic legitimate pharmaceuticals. Fentanyl pills. Not thousands. Not hundreds of thousands. By the time the first count is radioed back to command, it's already in the language of catastrophe. Millions. And then the other number begins to form. Wait. By dawn, the combined seizures across the first wave will be described in briefings the way disaster totals get described after a storm. 5.5 tons of mixed narcotics. Cocaine bricks with grease pencil codes. Methamphetamine packaged in candy-colored plastic. Heroin wrapped in layers like it's afraid of the air. Fentanyl in powder and pill form, enough to poison a region many times over. And the money. At 5:03 a.m., a team opens a concealed floor safe inside a back office behind a fake wall. They find stacks of cash vacuum sealed into bricks. A second safe behind it holds gold bars. A third holds something different. Not money, not drugs. A set of encrypted hard drives. Heavy, cold, labeled in small black marker with dates and a single phrase repeated like a warning. Bench keys. The agents don't celebrate, because in that moment, they understand something that changes the tone of the entire operation. This isn't just trafficking. This is legal coverage. This is an invisible shield. And somebody on the inside signed for it. 10:18 a.m., FBI Cyber Forensics Lab outside Minneapolis. Fluorescent light. Cold coffee. Monitors reflecting off tired eyes. The kind of room where chaos gets turned into timelines and names get turned into charges. Analysts in gloves slide the seized drives into a forensic dock. They don't open files. They clone images, preserve chain of custody, verify hash values. This isn't Hollywood. This is method. And then the encryption fights back. A lattice of passphrases, nested containers, multiple operating systems hidden inside each other like Russian dolls. But federal labs don't panic. They work. At 1:07 p.m., one container cracks. At 1:19 p.m., another. And at 1:44 p.m., a diagram appears on a screen that makes the room go quiet. It isn't a spreadsheet. It's a network map. Nodes and lines. Shell companies feeding into other shell companies. Payroll-style transfers disguised as consulting. Offshore accounts routed through layers of trustees. Sham charities with names designed to sound like community uplift. Restaurant chains that never turn a real profit but always have cash. Logistics firms leasing trucks that never appear on any legitimate routes. And in the center of the map is a code name. Operation North Star Vale. A system built around Minnesota the way a cartel builds around a port city. Not an accidental pipeline. A designed corridor. The analysts trace it outward. South Texas and Arizona crossings feeding into Midwest distribution. Freight loads moved through Minnesota like it's a safe house in plain sight because, according to the data, it was. Then the forensics team finds something that doesn't belong in any criminal ledger. A set of court case numbers, dismissals, suppressed evidence orders, sealed affidavits, bail reductions that make no sense, warrants delayed just long enough for a warehouse to empty. And attached to those entries is an authentication token, an encrypted authorization key used to approve certain legal actions in a state judicial system. A signature that only a small number of people could produce. And one of them, according to the key registry and internal logs, was a judge, not a clerk, not a public defender, a sitting Minnesota state judge, fictional name now moving like a shadow across federal paperwork, Judge Alastair R. Vance. In private, agents don't call it corruption anymore. They call it what it looks like, command-level collusion. Because the logs don't just show a judge taking money, they show a judge directing flow. They show the legal system being used like a traffic control tower, clearing routes, grounding threats, redirecting heat away from cartel nodes. One agent in the room says it quietly, almost like a prayer. This is not negligence. A second answers with something colder. This is engineered. And when they zoom out on the map and see the next set of markers, dozens of addresses outside Minneapolis, across Minnesota logistics corridors, they realize the first raid wasn't the takedown. It was the knock. The real operation is what comes next. 5:12 a.m. the next day, Joint Command Center, Bloomington, Minnesota. A dawn that feels like steel. Inside a secured facility, a wall-sized digital map glows. Minnesota spread out like a battlefield. And across it, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the river towns, the highway hubs, the warehouse corridors. Red markers pulse like infected wounds. Every marker is an address. Every address is tied to North Star Vale. At the center table, federal supervisors and tactical coordinators stand shoulder to shoulder. Radios hiss. Helicopter flight plans blink on screens. Legal binders with warrants sit stacked like bricks, signed and ready. The numbers are read out like a verdict. Over 1,000 federal agents mobilized across multiple task forces, dozens of SWAT teams, air assets staged, Black Hawk helicopters for overwatch and rapid insertion, not for spectacle, but because time matters and roads can be blocked. Armored vehicles for high-risk entries where cartel members are known to keep rifles and explosives. ICE teams assigned to human trafficking and migrant smuggling nodes. DIA teams assigned to super labs, stash houses, and distribution points. FBI teams assigned to financial seizures and the capture of command personnel tied to the judge's legal cover network. And somewhere in the room a phrase gets repeated, because it frames the truth. We're not raiding a cartel. We're raiding a system that protects one. At 5:49 a.m., the second wave begins. In a rural industrial park west of the Twin Cities, a desert-style meth operation has been transplanted into a cold-weather warehouse with insulated walls and diesel heaters. Agents breach and find barrels, lab glass, filters stained the color of poison, and men in respirators scrambling to destroy evidence. They don't get the chance. At 6:07 a.m., a high-end mansion on a wooded ridge, money that doesn't match any declared income, gets hit. Inside, a drug fortress pretending to be a family home. Hidden behind a wine rack, a steel door. Behind the steel door, weapons, AR platform rifles, pistols with switches, body armor, thermal optics, and a notebook with numbers that match the Cyberlab's ledger, shipment weights, dates, and one recurring line item. Court clears. At 6:22 a.m., near a transportation hub, agents stop a convoy before it reaches the interstate. 2 tractor trailers, a refrigerated load on paper. The drivers look calm until they realize the line of unmarked cars isn't state patrol. They're pulled out. Hands zip-tied. The trailer doors open. Inside, pallets wrapped in plastic, labeled like produce. But the produce is a cover. Under the first layer, cocaine. Under the second, meth. Under the third, fentanyl powder sealed into bags the size of small pillows. At 6:48 a.m., a tunnel lead gets hit near a border-linked staging property. No, not a Hollywood tunnel, not a giant underground highway, but a concealed access point to a network of hidden compartments and transfer routes used to move people and product with minimal exposure. A corridor of concealment, not a cinematic tunnel. The kind of thing that looks like nothing unless you know what you're looking for. And then the arrests begin to cascade. Cartel members, distributors, money handlers, dispatch managers, and then a name that isn't supposed to be in the same sentence as a cartel raid: a judge. By mid-morning, the operation has seized not only narcotics and cash, but the other kind of weapon: information. Server farms humming in back rooms, encrypted radios, burner phones stacked like playing cards, hard drives labeled with dates and court terms, And when the official numbers are tallied, the line lands like a hammer. The underworld took more damage in 6 hours than in the last 6 years. 2:16 p.m. Secure Evidence Facility, Minnesota. This is where the story turns from raids to rot. Federal investigators line up seized servers and begin pulling logs, call detail records, message archives, money transfers, patrol schedules, internal emails. The stuff that shows you who knew what and when they chose to stay silent. They find the first pattern in the border and highway enforcement data. Way stations down for maintenance at exact times convoys moved. Patrol grids altered. Not random, changed like a script. Routes cleared and then re-cleared. The second pattern is worse. Internal law enforcement communications. Coded phrases that mean nothing to civilians but everything to people in uniform. A deputy chief forwarding a heads up about planned raids. A supervisor shifting manpower away from a warehouse district on the night a shipment arrived. The investigators don't need to guess what it means. They have the payments. Gift cards in small increments. Then consulting checks. Then lump sums disguised through nonprofits and sham foundations. A clean pathway from cartel money into American pockets. The count starts small, then grows. By the time they finish correlating the data, the number is no longer a rumor, it's a body count of trust. Dozens of compromised individuals across the enforcement chain. Officers, border-linked personnel, a handful of court-adjacent officials, at least one legislative staff liaison tied to grant steering, money meant for community programs redirected into security upgrades that conveniently benefited cartel fronts. And when they lay it all out, it looks like something that should not exist in a democracy. A second enforcement system, a parallel police force, not wearing cartel tattoos, wearing credentials. One veteran investigator, a person who has spent a career in rooms like this, stares at the wall of connections and says a line nobody writes down because it sounds too dramatic to be true until you're standing in front of the proof. They didn't infiltrate law enforcement. They built a mirror of it. Then come the emotional moments nobody sees on press conference stages. An honest officer, years on the job, learning that a trusted supervisor was on the take, that the reason a case collapsed wasn't bad luck or lack of evidence, it was sabotage. A federal agent calling a spouse and saying they'll be late again because the evidence keeps coming and every new file feels like another betrayal. And when the arrests of senior personnel begin, sergeants, planners, command-level coordinators, the message becomes clear. This isn't just about punishing criminals, it's about rebuilding the badge from the ground up. Because when a cartel can buy the schedule, the routes, and the courtroom, no neighborhood is safe, and no verdict is clean. Now zoom out. Because Minneapolis wasn't the end of the line, it was the center of the web. At 9:40 p.m., a broader intelligence briefing assembles the map on a national scale. Minnesota is a corridor state, distribution arteries feeding into the Dakotas, Wisconsin, Iowa, down toward Chicago lanes, across toward shipping routes, and back into the country's freight bloodstream. The Sinaloa-linked network didn't just move drugs, it moved with discipline. Trucking contractors operating under legitimate logos, agricultural routes used as camouflage, shipments that can't be delayed without spoiling, which discourages inspection. Shipping manifests altered with subtle tricks, weights within tolerances, item codes that look routine, paperwork that passes a glance, warehouse leases signed under ghost corporations that vanish after 6 months, and when they needed cover, they used the oldest trick in the book. People, migrant smuggling corridors used as distraction and leverage. Human trafficking used as profit and control. The same dispatchers and safe houses that moved narcotics also moved bodies. Because if you're willing to treat human beings like cargo, you're willing to do anything. The analysts estimate how much product could have moved through this system without triggering alerts. Not a little. A steady flow. Tons of narcotics per week in aggregated loads. Enough to saturate multiple states, feed street-level markets, and bankroll the next phase. And then they find it. A file inside the judge, linked drive set. Flagged with a title that reads like a plan, not a record. A long-term strategy document, not a confession. A blueprint. It describes Minnesota as a stable hub. A place where enforcement pressure could be shaped. Where legal friction could be controlled, where the courtroom could become a shield and a weapon at the same time. A permanent headquarters in plain sight. A cartel fortress built not from walls, but from paperwork. And the realization that hits the room is the one you can't unfeel once you understand it. This system wasn't redesigned for a single shipment. It was redesigned for the cartel future. This is what power looks like when it stops needing open violence. Sometimes it doesn't need shootouts in the street. Sometimes it only needs silence in offices. Ambition behind closed doors. A signature where the public expects protection. A judge who doesn't just take the bribe, who moves the pieces. A city that keeps running while poison moves through its veins. And if you're listening to this right now, you need to hold on to one truth. This is how democracies get hollowed out. Not all at once, not with a flag burning, but with small decisions that add up to a machine, one that serves organized crime better than it serves the people. Because every fentanyl pill has a destination. Every brick of cocaine has a neighborhood. Every bag of methamphetamine has a family. It will fracture. And every time a case gets lost, every time evidence gets suppressed, every time a warrant gets delayed for reasons that never make sense, there's a cost. It's measured in overdoses, it's measured in sirens, it's measured in empty seats at dinner tables. Officials will stand at podiums and read numbers. 5.5 tons. $74 million. But the real number is the one they never say out loud. How many lives would have been next? And how close the system came to normalizing cartel control as just another part of doing business. So here's the question that sits in the aftermath, heavy as concrete. How many more networks are hiding behind routine traffic stops, behind administrative delays, behind sealed files and quiet favors? How many more people with real authority are quietly turning the wheel? If you're still watching, tap like so more people see this story, and comment expose if you want this corruption dragged into the light. Every ledger, every shell company, every backroom promise, every traitor signature. Because the cartel doesn't fear your anger. It fears your attention. And once the light hits it, the whole machine starts to break.